and welcome to Dispel Magic, the podcast where we overthink how the magic of D&D might shape your campaign in surprising and unexpected ways. I'm Benjamin, game designer and writer, on Twitter at Sterling Vermin and the internet at sterlingvermin.com.
And my name's Dane. I'm a dungeon master, podcaster, and voice actor. You can find me everywhere you want to at Dane in Danger.
And places you don't want him to.
Yeah, I'll be there. Season 2, baby.
Season 2.
Season 2. Speaking of Season 2, this is a podcast about the magic of D&D.
Right. Well,
and spells are not the only magic things in the world, Benjamin.
No, not just spells.
No.
Not just items.
Nope. In
There
fact,
are some very fanciful creatures
magical even.
in D&D.
Yeah.
You might say magic.
I might even say it. I'll say it right now. They're magical creatures.
And today we're going to cover one of those creatures. We talked about rust monsters last season. That was a lot of fun.
Love them.
This season we're going to talk about my personal favorite monster in all of D&D,
Myconids.
Myconids.
When you said my so poignantly, I thought you were going to say my.
Oh no,
Conids.
that would have been a good, yeah.
My kids. My
Personal favorite monster, Myconids.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Before we jump into the nitty-gritty and the details, if you are somehow unfamiliar, Myconids are mushroom people. They live under the earth, and they have kind of hippie commune type of things.
Don't like the sun. They get burned by the
They
sun.
don't like the sun. They hate the sun. But the elevator pitch is psychic, psychoactive, psychedelic mushroom people.
You've mentioned that they're searching for some sort of higher consciousness as well. Is that right?
We'll talk about that in a minute. Why don't you
okay.
do the rundown on them, and we can talk more about that.
Sure. Every colony is ruled by a sovereign, the physically largest of the colony, and consists of one or more circles. Each circle consists of 20 or more myconids that work, live, and meld together. A meld is a form of communal meditation. Myconid rapport spores allow them to bind participants into a group consciousness, and hallucination spores, produced only by the sovereign, allow for a kind of shared dreaming vision entertainment. All of this is in service of the Myconid's pursuit of higher consciousness, collective union, and spiritual apotheosis. Sovereign Myconids can fungally reanimate humanoid or beast large or smaller that used to be alive and made of flesh and blood. These reanimated creatures only live for 1d4 plus 1 weeks, and then can't be brought back again. During that time, the reanimated creatures are plants.
It's a lot of cool stuff.
That is a lot of cool stuff.
Mushroom people.
I've always loved mushroom people.
Yeah, I mean,
and
it's
there's
a
a lot of fun stuff with them here in D&D 5e.
It's a very, very much a fantasy setting idea of the mushroom people.
Yeah.
Fantasiastic. There's mushroom dance in Fantasia.
Okay, I don't think we need to plug a Disney product.
Okay, fair enough.
Thank you. Yeah, so if you go look at the Myconids stat block, you'll see there's a few different Myconids. I think there's a young Myconid. There's a Myconid spore servant, which is, I think, meant to replicate that reanimated corpse. There's a Myconid adult and a Myconid sovereign. They all have
different abilities.
Well, it's more like they're layered. The Myconid youth, or whatever it's called, has fewer abilities than the adult, which has all the youth stuff and more reliable versions of it. And then the sovereign has more reliable versions and more stuff than the adult does.
Got it.
Yeah.
They're Pokemon that are leveling up.
Essentially, yeah. That would be a good way for you to think about it, at least. For you to understand.
I got to catch it all, so.
Right.
All of the information.
So the big things we're going to be hitting on here are that Myconids as a category, not necessarily each type of Myconid, produce several kinds of spores that are going to have uses beyond, what they might intend. So hallucination spores, which are spores they can send out to cause a creature to become poisoned, I think is what it is, for a minute. During that time, they're hallucinating. There's rapport spores, which allow them to create kind of psychic unions. A group of people infected with this can communicate telepathically. We've also got animating spores, which are those spores I was talking about, where the sovereign can bring a corpse to life as a plant. And then pacifying spores, which are just spores, I guess, that kind of zonk you out.
Cool you off.
Yeah.
Just take the edge off.
They also have distress spores. There's not really a whole lot of interesting things that I thought of that you could do with that, but just for completion's sake, they have,
We're including it here.
distress spores where if one of them gets hurt and any other Myconid is nearby, they sense that pain. So the first thing that caught my eye when I was looking at Myconids, thinking about this episode and trying to figure out if they were relevant for our show, was hallucination spores, which I want to say up front, the fictional introduction to Myconids references it a lot as if it's a common thing in Myconid culture.
Mm-hmm.
But when you actually look at the stat blocks, it's only the sovereign. So there's only one
It's not.
Myconid in the whole
It's not just happening
colony.
willy nilly.
Yeah. But regardless, there is a race of people out there who, in every group, there's one of them that can just produce an endless amount of psychoactive
Drugs.
drugs. And people love drugs.
People love drugs.
People love drugs.
So if you make friends with the Myconids, then
Right. Well, so here's the other thing. People love drugs, and Myconids love just being chill. Are you gonna find a better situation than drug dealers who just
wanna
want
be chill.
you to want to be chill, and are like happy to give you what
Yeah.
you need to be chill too?
you just show up
Yeah.
and they're like, yeah.
So
Here.
I can imagine that, like, if there was like a really huge Myconid colony underground, or like multiple Myconid colonies, so you'd have multiple
A
sovereigns.
mycelium.
I can
Yeah.
imagine that you could have like a city state on top of it that's just like a known drug city. Like you go there and like it's like a party city. It's like Las Vegas or something.
Yeah, or
Like, that's-
Amsterdam.
Yeah, or like that's where you go to get high on hallucination spores. There's just a kind of pipeline from like the city does everything it can to keep those Myconids safe, to help new colonies get created underground.
they're helping them out.
Yeah, and so it's like form a reciprocal relationship and have that going. That said, obviously there's going to be demand that exceeds what might be able to be produced locally, and sometimes you might live in a city or whatever else where there aren't Myconids nearby, and that's where this transitions into like an industry.
Which, not the Myconids' natural state of being.
Well, I don't think the Myconids would really have any part in the industry apart from producer, but I think it's very easy to imagine that essentially a drug cartel would get formed around these things. And what I really like about that idea is that drug cartels generally don't have super great reputations, right?
But this one,
Well, this one might also be very, very dangerous, but they've got to keep a totally separate face for the Myconids they work with.
yeah, they got to
Because
be
the
chill.
Myconids don't want to work with people or don't want to help people who are awful and are violent and are,
Yeah.
all that. So they've got to have like people interacting with the Myconids who can
Save face.
appear to be on the level. But then once that product is extracted, the spores have been removed.
Then it's just the seedy underbelly.
Yes, then it's the terrible things people do to one another.
Well, you bringing up a city, I feel like the distress spores would play a part in that city as a method of alerting the city. So if you had like a Myconid at each like outpost station or on a wall around the city or something, then that's a great way of alerting the entire city silently.
So you're saying that would be a way that the Myconids could give back to the city?
Yeah, they
Yeah.
participate in defense of their place.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, in this kind of idea of like a reciprocal city-state where there are Myconid colonies underground, where the city is like a massive tourist destination because of the spores produced by those Myconids. One of the things the Myconids can give back, although it sounds like they're doing most of the giving in this circumstance already,
Yeah.
is that they could, although only at night, right? Because they can't go above. They don't want them out in daylight. They get destroyed in daylight.
I think having dark rooms would save that.
So like
but,
dark rooms are like looking outside and
well, I
but they
think
gotta
they'd
get
be
hurt to-
They'd be paired up with a person.
and then that person would like hit the Myconid if they
just
saw something.
give
Is
them
that
a
the
little
distress
tap. Yeah,
spores?
let everyone know what's going on. We're under attack.
That sounds like just an overall bad situation for Myconids. I would hope that they would get themselves out of that situation.
I would hope so too. Hey, more power to the Myconids.
Jumping back to the idea of a drug cartel, that opens up, I think, a really fun possibility for stories about druids and rangers, like an archdruid asking the party, like, hey, these Myconids don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
Can you go rescue them from this drug cartel?
They're contributing to a national problem. There's just teens on the street
I don't mean
getting
the
high.
drug use necessarily.
Oh, okay.
I mean like all the violence that
Yeah.
is like the kind of consequence of that kind of thing.
Sure.
I would have a very hard time believing that archdruids care about people getting high. Like that seems kind of like the thing that archdruids would be like. We're
into that, and we want to get to it easier.
Yeah. Right.
We don't have to want to go through these people.
Right.
Well, the classic Myconid story, I think, is you're traveling underground. You don't know what the Myconids are. You attack them. They get mad at you, and then you discover, right, that they're laid back, cool people. So, I think this
like a really boring arc.
Yeah. Well, I think that for new players who have no idea what
Sure.
they're
Right. Yeah. Like
about,
a strange new world type of thing.
Yeah.
where,
This
like,
is your introduction to the mushroom people, and then
Right.
you discover that they're nice.
Right.
So this is subverting that. This is like, no, they are the ones who need to be saved. That's cool.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, I think because they're so nice, there's a lot of room for the idea that when Myconids meet the outside world, that they are put in a like exploited
Right.
position because they just kind of want to chill out and share dreams with each other. Like they don't seem to, and it even specifies that they are careful not to overproduce new Myconids. They're not just growing willy-nilly. They're like the best kind of people, right?
Well, them being in the monster manual, and I think the concept art for them is a little scary. It's a little
Yes,
spooky.
yeah.
So I hadn't really dived into them. So before this, I just assumed they were another violent monster that wanted to use our corpses to grow more
Right.
mushrooms.
That would make
right?
sense.
So this is very pleasant. This is eye-opening. I like this.
Yeah, it's very cool. The rapport spores.
I think that's the most interesting part.
The rapport spores?
Yeah, to me.
Rapport spores sounds weird
Rapport
once you say it
spores.
a couple times in a row.
Rapport spores.
Rapport spores. So these are spores that Myconids can release. All kinds of Myconids can release these. They last for 1 hour when they affect you, and they affect all creatures with an intelligence of 2 or higher that isn't a construct, elemental, or undead. And what it does is it allows telepathy between all affected creatures, provided those creatures are within 30 feet of one another. So this is truly amazing. Like, I mean, first of all, I think
Universal translator. It's just
yeah, I mean, the reason it's there, in addition to facilitating the fantasy of Myconids, is also that, like, otherwise, how would you ever communicate with
Right.
Myconid if it didn't have the ability to basically let you communicate?
they
with
don't
it?
have mouths.
Right.
They're mushroom people.
Yeah.
I think we should drill down a little bit on what we mean by, or what our interpretation of telepathy is.
Yeah, we had a little bit of a conversation beforehand, and we were trying to figure out what exactly telepathy was like. Was it, I think a word in my mind and you hear the same word in your mind? If I'm thinking in images, does that image go directly into your mind? Or if I'm thinking about an image, is it the underlying thoughts and feelings around that image that get transmitted?
I think what we landed on is it could be all of that, but really it's kind of a deeper form of communication.
Yeah, ultimately, I feel almost embarrassed to say this.
Yeah.
We went to the allegory of the cave. If language and all other forms of communication are the shadows on the wall, then telepathy or
This form of
this
communication.
form of communication is the object casting that shadow.
The actual object
It is
itself.
the kind of root thing you could. It's like the purest possible form of communication
We
because
don't need shadow middlemen.
that might be true of all telepathy. I don't know.
Yeah.
But in this case, since it's affecting everything with an intelligence 2 of up, it can't just be that I'm thinking of an image and Dane gets it, because that image might mean something completely different to me than it does to Dane. For it to be telepathy, it has to be a kind of holistic, everything I'm intending.
Yeah. A pure form of intent
Right.
and feeling.
Yeah.
It's deep. Watch out. We're getting philosophical, y'all.
Yeah.
Bringing in Plato and shit. God damn.
Better unsubscribe now.
Get
It's
out of
only gonna
here.
get worse.
Hello, friends. Dane here saying thank you for listening and sharing our show. Telling other people about Dispel Magic is the best way for us to grow, along with you rating and reviewing our show on whatever podcast app you use.
We've also revamped our Patreon. Benjamin is writing monthly spells. There's a behind-the-screen show where we talk about our home games, along with other little extras we'll be sprinkling in here or there. So, if you like the show, please tell a friend, rate and review, and check out our Patreon. Thanks again for listening, and happy spelling. What I think is weird, because we looked up what animals or monsters this wouldn't work on.
Yeah.
Lemurs. Can't talk to lemurs.
It's lemurs, sharks, and then a bunch of bugs.
A bunch of bugs, some monsters.
Yeah.
Just Rego monsters, like gelatinous things.
But for the most part,
it's everything.
it's everything.
Violet fungus. Can't talk to those.
That was a fun one. The two kinds of mushrooms cannot communicate with one another.
Can't talk to this violet mushroom. What can they do for us? Who knows?
So one thing, I guess this is relevant to our interpretation of telepathy, but the text that precedes the Myconid stat blocks suggests that they're forming kind of hive minds, which is not the same thing as being able to communicate telepathy, but that's what the
they're
fiction
implying.
suggests or
Yeah.
implies. But the stat block doesn't say anything like that. And it makes me wonder if that's just because stat blocks are written to be like as kind of concise as possible. And so that just
clear
kinda,
cut.
Yeah. Or if it is the same thing. And if it is the same thing, if humanoids can join Myconids hive minds, there's probably a lot of humanoids who'd want to just ditch whatever they're doing and go join
Chill out.
like a kind of perpetually high and meditating.
I'm sure there's some sort of food down there.
There's mushrooms.
There's probably mushrooms.
Yeah.
They'd share.
Yeah.
Non-sentient ones
Right.
that you could eat.
I mean, yeah, bugs and
mushrooms.
There's water down there.
Oh, heck
so-
yeah. You're done. You're
Fish, maybe.
deep fish.
Yeah.
The weird white ones that
Yeah.
are blind.
But the biggest thing is like
Share the dream.
you can just imagine that there
yeah.
might be people leaving their communities to go join Myconid communes, basically.
Yeah. Find the truth, the inner peace.
That's just if we're thinking about Myconids producing it and kind of how people might relate to it. I do like the idea, especially like maybe there's a small village out in like in a rural area, and all of its youth are starting to like leave
Yeah.
and go join it. And so like you come to this village and the village elder has to be like, our kids are like going to get high and like hang out
We're
with
not
these,
sure
like,
what to do about
mushroom
this.
people. I'd like you to bring them back. It feels like kidnapping, but I do want you to bring them back.
Yeah.
Like they're just like leaving and living with mushrooms.
Sounds pretty good, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. I'll be right back. Maybe I'll go find out.
Actually, just take me there.
Yeah, I'll go.
But we like pitching adventures with twists. This I think would be one of those.
I imagine the NPC, you come upon a Myconid commune, and there's the one guy who found them, and he's just like, hey, it's great here. And he's been there for 20 years, and he's just vibing so hard.
I guess that's the thing, is that why would that one guy ever have left to go tell everybody else
Yeah, he
about
wouldn't.
the Myconids? He wouldn't have.
Unless he wants to share the word of the Myconid.
Well, that's true,
Yeah.
actually. And I mean, since they're all about like spiritual apotheosis and all this other stuff, I mean, I don't get the sense that they're evangelical.
No.
But
he might be.
He might be. I mean, especially if he lived in a place that was particularly dangerous or whatever else.
He's a former cleric who was spreading the word of Palor or whatever.
Yeah.
And now he's like, no, this is better.
Yeah.
This is so much better.
Palor doesn't make me feel good. These Myconids make me feel good.
Physically feel good.
Yeah.
Pastor Rick.
So even when Myconids are not around, though, people who could harvest these rapport spores, that would be seriously useful in espionage, conspiracy, insurrection, even in diplomacy, because...
Definitely diplomacy.
So, I mean, even before we got to this idea of, like, telepathy as kind of the purest form of communication, if you're a diplomat and you're traveling, you don't know... You can't possibly know every language, so you don't know who you're going to... Like, this is just a shortcut to that. And you don't even need to learn a spell. You just have to pay some money so that some Myconid harvester somewhere delivers the rapport spores to you.
Essentially, what you're providing is empathy. It's a deep form of empathy that you understand somebody on a deeper level.
Right.
So I think that all of these things are true with negotiations and whatnot. But I think just therapy might become a thing in the world if this is true. People wanting to understand each other on a deeper level.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that there's an impact on the world that we can't guess at because
Right.
there's no equivalent in this world. It reminds me of the end of Evangelion where everyone, spoilers for like a 25-year-old.
Was this
Thing.
anime?
Yeah.
You some kind of anime guy?
Look, if I'm talking about getting high with Myconids and mind melts, I feel like I can also talk about anime.
Sure.
So one of the endings of that series, there are several, is that
It's a different episode
Is that
of-
everybody joins into one mind together.
Oh wow.
A person becomes God.
Singularity.
And one of the decisions that's not. No, Dane.
Why'd you have to ruin it?
Somebody tweet at Dane in Danger and tell him what the singularity is, and because I'm not going to spend time that we should be doing this podcast explaining that topic to him. So
It's a separate show.
the point I'm getting at is that temporarily all minds fuse, like all people are one and can kind of perfectly communicate with one another. That doesn't work out for the person who chose to do that, but that happened. And it just makes me think, just like in that show, there's no way of understanding the kind of consequences that are going to come out of that perfect communication. It seems like it's going to push us all to be closer.
Deeper understanding.
Right. But if we
Universal
fundamentally
truth.
disagree on stuff, it might not.
Yeah.
It might mean that we just are pretty hard edged against each other because we've discovered that there are things that are irreconcilable differences.
Woof.
Sounds like me and my ex-wife.
Ooh. He's
I don't
adjusting
have an
his tie.
ex-wife.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's just
Yeah.
that was a joke.
My tie was loose already, and you could see the top thing was unbuttoned. And
All of that.
Yeah.
In other news,
So
we get to talk to dolphins now.
Yes, yeah. So we talked in the Speak with Animals episode about how like Speak with Animals actually doesn't work on dolphins
Weird.
because dolphins have an intelligence of 6, and Speak with Animals only works on animals with an intelligence of 3 or lower.
Narrow band.
If you want to speak with dolphins, you can use rapport spores from Myconids.
Report sports. I like saying it now.
Okay, rapport spores.
Report
That's fine.
sports. We got to talk to dolphins, and I came up with the idea personally of bards using this as a storytelling device and make it to movies. You think they could make it to movies? They get everyone together. Everyone takes a rapport spore,
Okay.
and then as they're telling their story and the collective telepathy starts happening, everyone's seeing the same story. It's like,
I think you'd want to give the bard the hallucination spore too.
yeah,
So that as he's giving it, he's just like, except for that's not really, I don't know. We don't know,
we don't know.
right, how the telepathy works.
This is how I see it, though.
If it does transmit visuals, then yes, you could have a kind of movie theater-esque type of like the person with the best imagination is kind of projecting a story into everyone else's minds.
Well, and if it's not images and it's just feelings, then there's a type of classical music that like a tone poem where it's not necessarily singular notes or recognizable melodies, but there are washes of sound that give you a particular feeling. And I feel like those type of things, tone poems and pastoral pieces that evoke a very specific feeling, could be reproduced in this way where there's a new art form of thought art, feeling art, where you compose this process of feeling from one to another in a poignant way, and you share that with a crowd. A new art form, a new performance.
Sure. I mean, if it's a whole new kind of sense in a way.
Yeah,
new
it's
method
almost
of
a new
communication,
sense.
Then
Wow. A whole new world. Don't you dare close your eyes. Thanks, Disney.
listeners, I'm going to tell you that Dane also wrote in the notes Total Recall and Inception, and I'm not going to let him talk about either of those things because nothing about rapport spores is like either the movie Total Recall or the movie Inception. And I will not allow Dane a moment to try to explain himself. So, thank you.
Just think about it. Think about it.
I'd rather not.
Just think about it a little bit.
I'm going to briefly touch on pacifying spores, juggle around a little bit, and just say mostly these are going to be useful to that same group of people that's that's that same drug cartel.
Sure.
It's like useful as a poison because it stuns people for a minute, but most other people are not going to.
Well, any situation you
Me
want to
or
calm down people. So law enforcement, if you want to calm down
Yeah.
groups of people, yeah.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
mean,
You know, I'm just thinking about how awful that is. That
It's pretty awful.
We're creating a biological agent for city guards to weaponize against their own fantasy cities.
Well, and in smaller cases like tavern keepers to stop
Sure.
brawls
Right.
and things. Any situation where people start getting hot under their collar, you can now essentially.
Right. Probably more likely to be used for very nefarious reasons.
Oh,
like
of
just,
course.
yeah.
But if you have a setting and you want a new trick up your sleeve, then the tavern keeper throws a baggie of these spores at whoever's just trying to start some shit.
Yeah, I think that would be pretty sus, though, right? Like, I mean, it'd be like if if a bar, like in real life, if a barman had like a muscle relaxer back behind the, it'd be like, dude, why
Dart
do
gun.
you have that? I don't think that's
For
okay.
this, it's
yeah,
it's to do this.
you know, in case a fight breaks out, I'm
gonna put him down.
gonna inject him with this, and then that'll be fine.
I've got a horse
Yeah.
tranquilizer back here, and a dart gun.
But you know, in Dane's world, that's how things work.
Man,
I guess, so
once you play in one of my games, it's a whole different ball game.
last thing we're going to touch on today
Yeah.
is animating spores.
Back from the dead.
This is something only sovereigns can do, and only a few times a day. Mostly, this spore is unique just in the ways it interacts with or mimics other spells. For instance, a sovereign who puts this on a corpse, that corpse is no longer eligible to be communicated with via Speak with Dead because it's no longer
Cutting
a
that
humanoid
off,
corpse.
yeah.
It's a plant now.
Plant now. Can you use mending on plants?
I don't think so because I think mending says an object,
It's an
and I don't think a plant is an object.
plant's not an object. All right.
But I don't know.
Because if you could, and somebody was missing an arm, they could turn into a plant, and then you could
It'd be a very long process of having a Myconid do this to them. You cast mending to put their arm back on,
and then you
and
revivify.
and then you wait till they die, and then you revivify them. Or revivify is not the spell that would work, but maybe raise dead. But it's unclear to me how even that would interact because the thing you most recently was a plant monster,
Yeah.
not a humanoid. So I don't know. But that gets into my next point, which is that it's not clear to me when you reanimate a corpse with this if it has any amount of its memories. Because if it does, then it would be eligible for Speak with Plants. And so you could get all the memories out of this dead person. Like Speak with Plants also is much better than Speak with Dead.
Uh-huh.
Speak with Dead, if you'll remember, is
there's
I think like
rules.
3
There's a lot of rules.
yes or no or not yes or no questions, but 3 questions that have
Yeah.
to be answered. No, they don't have to be answered truthfully. They just
We should do an episode on it.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We have.
Oh, right.
But Speak with Plants, regardless, is a much more useful. Like you get a lot more information with Speak
Heck
with Plants.
yeah.
So this would be a fun way to circumvent also the limitations of Speak with Dead, is to take the body to a Myconid, have the Myconid turn into a plant, and then access the memories that way. That said, I don't think it does retain the memories of when it was a
Probably not,
humanoid
right?
because it doesn't retain its languages,
Oh, yeah.
which suggests that
Its personality has
that
been
it's like
wiped.
that like the fungus infecting it is now serving as its central nervous system. And
It's almost like a part of the hive mind in a way. It's another myconid, but
Right.
in the corpse of
Right.
a body.
a lot of things we talked about in the Animate Dead episode apply here too, except for that it's slightly less dangerous in that, well, it's slightly less dangerous and also in some ways less useful because you can motivate a zombie by putting a living thing in front of it. You can't motivate
A plant.
a plant to do anything. So like it's not dangerous for other people to be around, but also with the zombie, once it's not controlled, there's still ways to motivate it to get to do something. In this case, with the spore servant that Myconids can create, they listen to what Myconids tell them to do, and then other than that, they just don't do anything.
What is the utility of this for myconids? To be able to control dead bodies?
It's a really good question. I think especially since only the Sovereign can do it, it must be one of the very few defensive capabilities that they have. It's meant to be like, if we have to get into a fight, then we, infect and bring back defeated enemies to serve as warriors for us.
And then we're not risking our own.
Yeah, I mean, it must be that. It is weird though, because they're all, it's a pretty big thematic tangent from everything else.
Well, I feel like
they
it
can do.
plays back into that same trope that I brought up before of like, oh, they're monsters. Oh, wait, no, they're nice. But, if they're turning your fallen comrades into zombies, you're going to be
Right.
like, they're monsters.
Yeah.
Right? So it feels like a monster made for the bait and switch for that one rote adventure.
Right.
And then once you're done, you're like, okay, well, we did that. Scratch that off the D&D list. So it's good that there's other avenues you can explore with them because they're really cool.
Yeah, they are really cool.
If there's anything else that you have to add about Myconids, you can tweet us at Dispel Magic Pod on Twitter. Or you can email us at dispelmagicpodcast@gmail.com.
Please send the Wikipedia link to Total Recall and Inception to Dane. If none of you do it, I'm going to be forced to explain the plot of those movies to him, and I don't want to. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you again after your next long rest.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Dispel Magic. If this has inspired any ideas for your game, or you have another take on today's topic, please let us know on Twitter at Dispel Magic Pod. You can find Benjamin at Sterling Vermin and Dane at Dane in Danger. Thank you to Slim Mittens for our cover art, produced by Benjamin Huffman, produced and edited by Dane Fox-McGraw.